I would like to welcome all of you to today's presentation on counter downsizing. It is presented by the Living Well Network, and our goal as an organization is to foster a strong, connected, engaged, and healthy community of residents 55 and up. The Living Well Network promotes lifelong learning, physical, mental, and social health, and connecting neighborhood elders, that's us, to each other and to other community members, to resources, to programs, services. And normally we also promote aging in place, but this is the first of our series on future planning, and we are including all options in the kinds of futures we might wish to plan. And I think any of you who might find us would find us at this website. So I'd like to introduce our panel for this morning. Our first panelist is Carey Gatto, who really helped pull this whole thing together. This is her baby. And Carey is a full-time realtor with 10 years of experience in the greater Boston area. She specializes in helping sellers maximize their selling price through cutting-edge marketing and professional negotiation. She lives in Stoneham with her husband and 3 children. Good morning, Carey.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having us. Hi, everybody.
We also have joining us today Judy Eisenberg. Judy is a professional organizer who established her business, the Clutter Clear Coach, it's a tongue twister, in 2009. She helps people who feel discouraged and overwhelmed declutter, get organized, and live a more satisfying life with less stuff. Judy lives in Somerville with her life partner, Steve, and their 2 cats. Good morning, Judy.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Okay, and now Sarah Hartline is an estate planning attorney with Margulis and Bloom. Sarah has been with the firm for 8 years. She lives in Arlington with her husband and 2 young sons. She meets with clients at the Arlington office, at their homes, and now virtually via Zoom. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. It's so great to be here. Hi, everyone.
Bridgette Soucie is with us this morning. She's an insurance professional with New York Life Insurance Company, New York Life Securities. She helps individuals, families, and small businesses with protection as well as with retirement planning. She's the mom of 2 amazing adults. Bridgette, would you like to say hello to us?
Yes, thank you so much, Kathy. Nice to meet you, everyone.
All right, welcome. Finally, Wendy Tatlock is a certified senior advisor and owner of the local Care Patrol, which is the nation's largest senior placement franchise. Good morning.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here as well.
All right, now I would like to turn it over to Carey, and the rest of us are going to mute ourselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy. This seems like such a wonderful organization, and I know I speak for all of us when I say we're honored to be here with you. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen now. Get started. And as Kathy mentioned, we have reserved about 10 minutes at the end of this presentation for questions. So please feel free to use the chat box if questions come up as we go through the presentation, and we will make sure to answer them. And just so you know, my colleagues here and I decided to create this webinar with the understanding that there are so many factors to consider when downsizing. And so the panel, we're going to cover all the bases for you today, and our goal is to make the process seem less overwhelming and more manageable if this is a route that you choose to take in the future. So a little bit about me. My name is Carey Gatto. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Realty. My office is in Cambridge, and I live in Stoneham, as Kathy mentioned. I specialize in the greater Boston area. I'm pretty mobile, so I can go wherever the referrals or the business takes me. I'm a full-time realtor, and I have 10 years of experience in this area. And I really love to make my clients feel comfortable and confident, making their real estate decisions by delivering strong communication and gentle but direct and honest guidance. And so during my career, I've mainly specialized in working with sellers. And with that, I've helped a lot of clients downsize from a large family home to a smaller residence. And I found that most, if not all of my clients initially felt daunted and even overwhelmed by this potential process, both emotionally and logistically. And after all, I mean, no one likes moving, right? And it's always a pain. However, if you've been in the same place for years and years or even decades and accumulated lots of things and lots of memories, it's just even more so. And because of this, people can tend to stall or procrastinate. It's just natural. However, with taking action, even if it's a small action, comes momentum, which builds confidence and creates more action. So after successfully downsizing, my clients always find that they are actually much happier, having less maintenance and worry, and more time to enjoy their family, friends, and hobbies. In fact, they often tell me that looking back, they wish they'd done it sooner. So why don't we take a look at some of the most common hurdles that I hear from my clients about downsizing. So maybe you can relate. First of all, this is the most common concern that I hear is I just don't know where to go. Naturally, people like to be close to the services and the places they've become familiar with and acquainted to, and sometimes partners don't agree 100% on where to go. I often hear that condos have become too expensive and it doesn't seem like a lucrative move because of that. So just so you know, the first thing I'll do with my potential clients is a buyer interview and consultation where we determine what is most important to them about the move. So I ask some really good questions, do a lot of listening, find out what the new home must have and also what's on the wish list. And from there, knowing what your priorities are and of your partner, if you have one, I'll create a list of areas that could potentially work for you. Also, if you're looking at a senior housing option, I'll refer you to Wendy Tatlock, who is here today, who knows all the variables and the landscape of the senior housing options that are out there. You'll hear from her in a little bit. Another question I get, just to back up for a moment. Another question I get is whether to buy or whether to sell first. And I find that really selling works best in most cases. Even if you need the equity in your current property in order to buy the next home, because we're in such a good seller's market here in Cambridge and the greater Boston area, you can find that you get a lot of flexibility from the potential buyers in the market. So we can time it and even make your sale subject to finding a suitable new home, so that you're really in the driver's seat and you can kind of coordinate the timing to your needs. So that brings me to the next concern, which is I have too much stuff. And this is a very, very real concern. A lot of people will procrastinate for a lot of time just because of this. And I get it. I mean, after raising children and living in the same house for sometimes decades, it can seem completely overwhelming to have to go through the attic, the basement, the closets, just all that stuff. And I hate throwing things away, so I totally get it. But the good news is you can have someone help you with that. And that's why I like to refer people to Judy Eisenberg, the Declutter Career Coach. She specializes in helping people declutter their lives, even if they're still going to live there or if they're moving. And she has some really great systems for making it more efficient and even enjoyable. So she'll talk about that in just a little while. And trust me, after you purge that clutter, you're going to feel so much better, and you may even decide to stay. I also have people tell me they're worried about being fair to the kids. They don't want to, leave someone out of an inheritance or money from the sale. So I hear this a lot as well, and it's always from very thoughtful, very generous, very giving people. So it's a good thing that you want to be fair to your kids. However, even in the most close-knit families, siblings can have different needs and different wants depending on where they are in their life. So leaving a property to siblings might not always be the best way to go. Some will want to sell the property, some might want to hold it depending on their situations and their goals. So I recommend speaking to an estate planning attorney such as Sarah Hartline, who is here today, so you can help decide how to make the most of your assets and create a legacy for your family the way that you really want to do. Also, if you have life insurance, you might be wondering how to make the best use of the benefits. You could also be considering purchasing life insurance for your children or grandchildren, which can be made accessible to them for things later in life, like education or buying a home. And for that reason, we have Bridgette and Soucie here as well, so she can help you and your family prepare for their future. And as a realtor, I'm responsible for coordinating the sale, purchase, move on your behalf so that you can really focus on your life. So I'll do things like create a customized marketing plan for your home. And right now we're making great use of virtual tours and 3D floor plans so that buyers can see the home virtually from their living room. And that means less people need to actually visit the home in person during this time. We also do targeted social media campaigns. We advertise on over 400 websites. And we make sure just basically everybody knows about your home. We make sure every agent in Massachusetts knows about it. And I'll negotiate the highest possible price on your current home while helping you get your new home on your terms. I'll also coordinate with all the parties involved, you know, there's attorneys, inspectors, sometimes appraisers, the other agent involved, and I'll just make sure that it goes smoothly and there's no surprises for you along the way and bring it to a successful close. And with that, here's a quick review from some of my clients who actually downsized last year and are very happily living in their new home. They said that Carey and her team were amazing. They sold our home for more than they expected and coordinated the timing of our 2 closings to make the move as stress-free as possible. They were very communicative and always available for questions. We were kept in the loop. We really felt as though they cared about our family's needs. We highly recommend Carey and her team. So that was good to hear. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to being of service. I do recommend that even if you're thinking about this, even years down the road, it's never too early to schedule a consultation. We can do it over Zoom or even over the phone, just to make sure that you're doing all you can in preparation to make it successful for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy Tatlock of Care Patrol, who is your resource for simplifying the landscape of senior living options.
Give me a second here. Hi. There we go. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Carey. Again, I'm Wendy Tatlock. I am a senior care advisor and my company is Care Patrol. I am very passionate about helping seniors find safe and affordable living options that are a great fit for them. My services are free to families because I'm paid by a community if someone moves in. I consider myself really part realtor and part social worker because I help families find whatever resources they need. I facilitate difficult family situations. I help them work through how to pay for wherever they're going to go. And I coach them through what questions to ask and how to weigh different options in an often difficult and emotional decision. Today, I'm going to talk about the main considerations in how to select a great fitting living option, and I'm going to explain 4 main types of senior housing and their pros and cons. It can be a very emotional decision, and so I like to break down 4 main considerations. There's geography. We are very lucky to live in a region with tremendous options and resources. So ask yourself, what do I want to live nearby? Family, my neighborhood, church, etc. There's obviously budget. You have to look at your income and assets, but there are a few other helpful items as well. In preparation, break out your monthly expenses in terms of non-medical versus medical, including prescriptions, insurance, and co-pays, etc. This is because if you move, the medical piece stays with you and the other expenses change. And with assisted living, for example, all of those other expenses are typically included. And then finally, these last 4 items are other ways seniors fund different living options. So it's helpful to have the values of those pieces handy as you're weighing your options. I think the most important aspect of consideration is care. And there are different types of care. Depending on your care needs now and in the future, different living solutions may be a better fit for you. Do you need help with activities of daily living or ADLs, like showering and getting around? Do you or your family members have memory issues and need help with that? These types of care needs are different than medical care needs, such as injections, wound care, etc. And there's ongoing medical needs versus acute care needs. So again, all of these pieces factor into where makes the most sense for you to live. And then finally, what are your personal preferences? What kinds of hobbies and activities are important for you? Is personal space and living in a standalone house really important, or are you okay with downsizing into a smaller apartment? Are you a very private person who enjoys a great amount of alone time, or do you thrive in a more social setting around more people? Most people are somewhere in the middle, but it's helpful to have thought through these preferences as you're weighing your options. Now I'm going to review 4 different senior living options, sharing their costs and pros and cons. I'm going to start with in-home care. This is where you stay in your house and bring in help as you need it. Most people choose this option, and it's a fabulous fit. It's approximately, for budgeting and planning purposes, think about approximately $30 an hour for quote unquote non-medical help with a minimum of a few hours at a time. And this can calculate to about $20,000 a month for full-time care. The positives here are that you stay in your spacious home where you've lived a long time, presumably, or a smaller home if you've downsized. And it's typically the cheapest option if you don't need much help. However, this can be isolating and very expensive if you need a lot of help, and it can be very difficult to coordinate care needs as your needs increase. CCRCs are a different option. This is those large campuses you see that have different levels of care, including typically townhouses for independent living, some sort of assisted living, and even a nursing home on the property. These are expensive, with a buy-in that can be several $100,000 up to over $1 million, plus several $1,000s a month in fees for services, and this doesn't include care. These are great for people who are really independent, can afford it, can walk pretty far over the campus, who want a larger living space, and want access to excellent nursing home if they think they might need that for medical needs in the future. The challenge here, other than being expensive, is that you have to be truly independent to be accepted, and there's typically a long wait list, and you still have to coordinate your care as your care needs grow. You're really buying into access to a nursing home that you may or may not need, and we'll talk more about nursing homes in a minute. Assisted living is different from a CCRC in that it's a rental model, and all the apartments are contained within a building. Think of this like living on a cruise ship or in a nicer college dorm where you have a pretty small apartment, but meals and social activities are in the larger building. The price range is pretty broad, depending on the community you choose, your care needs, and whether you qualify for a special financing program. These prices typically include all of your living expenses except your medical. Assisted living, they help you with your activities of daily living, and they coordinate the care for you. The environment is as social as you want it to be. It's not isolating like some people find it at home. Assisted living is an exceptional solution when dementia is involved. Especially in the New England area, we have fabulous dementia communities. The caregivers there are experienced with how to care for the disease, the environment is safe, and it lets the family get back to a more normal relationship with the senior and out of that caregiving role that can be just so hard. Also with assisted living, there's peace of mind of daily check-ins and a point of contact for concerned family members who live far away. The main cons, other than the price, is that the living space is small and some worry about privacy. The reality is your apartment is your apartment and you engage as much as you want. So for some people, this is a good solution. I'm also going to talk about nursing homes now because they're often confused with these other options. They're really a medical facility rather than a living option and not an ideal place to be unless you need that high level of medical care. They're very expensive for private pay. Medicare only covers them following an acute medical issue. Medicaid will pay after you spend down your assets. But unfortunately, Medicaid doesn't reimburse them at a very high rate, so most nursing homes can't really afford to be very nice. And again, it's a medical environment, so you really only want to be there if you have extreme medical needs or if you can't afford to live elsewhere. The rooms, services, and food tend to be lower quality than with the other living options. The last point I'm going to make, and this is one you'll hear in the presentations of my peers, is that regardless of which option you take, it's really important to plan ahead. With CCRCs, there's a wait list, and you have to be completely healthy and mobile in order to move in. With assisted living, they'll allow you to stay there and age in place, even if your physical needs become very high, if you're already living there. For example, if you need 2 people to help you get out of bed, they'll provide that service if you're already living there, but they won't accept you as a move-in in that condition. Even with skilled nursing, there's a big difference between the good ones and the not so good ones. And if you need that high level of medical care of a nursing home, you can get into a good one if you plan to private pay for 3 to 6 months at about $20,000 a month. And so you're stuck with one that's mediocre then if you can't afford that. And again, many of the better ones have waiting lists. So that's it for me. I am going to now turn you over to Judy to talk about downsizing and living a life with less.
Hi, everybody. Can you all see me? Good. Whoops. Oh, what just happened here? Okay. So my name is Judy Eisenberg, as you've all heard, and I'm a professional organizer, clutter clear coach. And I work with people who feel really stuck and discouraged because of their clutter and their overwhelm. And I help them to sort through all their stuff and make decisions about it. Of course, they make the final decision on what to let go and what to keep. And as we're letting go of stuff, my clients feel much freer and lighter and more in control of their lives. So I also help people downsize, and I'm also a coach. So we're talking about downsizing today, and yes, it's about moving from where you are to another place. And there are a lot of transitions in your life when that happens. And it's basically about living a life with less. Next. So what is downsizing? I'm sure you all know, but basically it's to maybe move to a smaller space, having less to take care of. And it's mostly about adapting to your new space. Next. So why would you downsize now? Well, you might be divorcing, combining households. Maybe you need to move to a smaller home or to assisted living, as Wendy was mentioning. Next. So when to downsize? You may need to be careful with your budget and stretch it. You may have too much to take care of at home and you want to ease up on what you have to do there. And you might need a safer environment. Next. So there are, as Carey mentioned, there are emotional impacts of downsizing. First of all, are you ready to move? And I can attest to myself, 3 years ago, I was living in an apartment in a 2-family, and the place was owned by Tufts University. I'd lived there for a lot of years, and Tufts had decided that they were going to have faculty move into the apartment, which meant I had to leave. So you can imagine how emotional I was about that. I felt overwhelmed, I was scared, and there was a big loss. Plus I had a wonderful garden outside the house that I was gonna lose. And memories. Next. So there are ways to ease up on those emotions. First of all, keep looking at the reason you're downsizing and look at that often. Sometimes it's really appropriate to make that step. You can seek support, perhaps through a therapist or counselor. And there's always meditation. It's a simple thing to do. And while I was going through that process, I certainly meditated a lot to calm myself and let go of the overwhelm and anxiety. Next. There are definitely positive outcomes after you downsize. You have less stress in your life. Living in a smaller place can be really freeing. You have fewer responsibilities, and it's a new beginning. I know when I moved to my new place, it was all on one floor. It was so much brighter than where I'd been living, and I was really happy. Next. So there are steps you need to take when you're going to downsize. First of all, as Carey mentioned, you want to make a plan. You want to figure out what realtor you might hire, what you're going to do about an open house, when you're going to start doing your decluttering and packing for the move. And schedule these sessions in your calendar and keep track. You want to make a list of everything you're going to take with you. That way you won't forget anything and leave it behind. You want to start with items that don't have a lot of sentimental value. It'll be much easier to make decisions. And next. So of course you want to declutter and organize. Here's a really messy office that got decluttered. Next. Of course you have to make decisions, and for some people it's really hard to do. Yes, no, maybe. So I recommend you begin with one small area in your home at a time, or one room at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself and take on too much at once. And then you're going to ask yourself, as I did when I was getting ready to pack and move, and as my clients need to do, ask yourself, do I love this? Pick up the item if it's holdable, and get a sense of, do you love it? Do you really need it? Can you let it go? Of course, you're going to make decisions about what you're keeping and packing, what you're going to store somewhere else. It may be in someone's basement, or maybe you have to get a storage unit temporarily because you're moving to a smaller space, most likely. Next. So if you're not sure what to let go of, here's some ideas, tips, hints. If you have an item such as, say, a small appliance in a box that's never been opened, or a piece of clothing in a bag with its price tag on, and you've never taken it out of the bag and never worn it, and I see a lot of that when I work with my clients, you can let it go because you'll probably never use it. Of course, you'll say, well, I might need this someday, or I might read it, like recipes that you've copied out or all the books on your bookshelf. Chances are, if you haven't, you won't. So perhaps you have projects. Maybe they're household projects or craft projects. The one, you may have started one and never finished it and then start another one. And if that's the case, take a good look at this before you pack up to move and be realistic. Are you really gonna use this? Are you really gonna finish it? If you know not, just let that go. Next. So I recommend you all don't declutter by yourself. only if you have to. It's a really long and can be an overwhelming process. It's good to have someone help you. So find yourself an accountability buddy. Maybe it's a family member or a friend. Maybe it's a neighbor that you feel close to who could help. And please do not choose someone disorganized if you are already disorganized. You know, that's not going to work. This person can help eliminate distractions or any procrastination you may have. And a lot of people procrastinate. I know I can. Be clear with all your needs or issues with this person. If you need to take a break every half hour because you tire easily, let them know. If you have ADD and your focus doesn't stay for very long, you know, you lose focus quickly, let them know. They may already know that if they're your friend. Be clear about those issues, and then let them know if you have a goal. Let them know that you want to get all the stuff sorted, decluttered, packed within a few months. You may want to have them come in every Saturday or every day during the week and help you if they're available. And the other thing is you could hire a professional organizer like myself. There's many organizers out there who will help you right by your side through the whole process, and they will not be judgmental. Next. So before you sell your home, you want to stage it, and Carey knows all about that, being the realtor locally. You could ask Carey or the realtor you're using to hire you a professional who can help you stage the house and get it ready for the sale. But you can also do some of this yourself. You want to depersonalize your space. If you have, like in this image, all sorts of pictures on the wall and photos of family and knickknacks and books all around, clear it out. Just have a few things showing. If you need storage, rent it. If you need to repair anything in the house, take care of it or hire a professional. Clean, clean, clean. Make sure there's no dust bunnies on the floor. Make sure there's no dust on the counters. You want to go neutral with color. So if you have a dark, dismal room or a room that's bright and garish and harsh, people coming through your open house may not have appeal for that. Open your blinds and shades, let the light in, and focus on curb appeal. Maybe in front of your home, there's weeds and shrubs that need to be pruned. So there's a lot of things to think about and do in home staging, but you can do a lot of it yourself. Next. So those folks that are coming through your home to possibly buy it, remember that the first impression they get is the only impression they get. Next. So again, downsizing, you want to clear things from the room. The room on the left isn't that crowded, but by taking things out and moving things around, you make it feel more spacious and appealing. Next. And curb appeal. Here's the weedy garden in the front, and there's the garden after the weeds are taken out and new plantings are put in. And I just want you all to know that not only am I a clutter clear coach, but I'm a professional gardener. My business is Sun and Shade Gardening, and if you need help with curb appeal, you can come to me. Next. So here's information about me, my gardening information, and you can contact me for a free half-hour phone call to talk about your organizing, your moving and downsizing needs, and also your curb appeal needs. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I'm going to turn you now over to Sarah Hartline, who will talk about estate planning with a focus on long-term care.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to pull up my screen here. Let's see. Great. So let me just make sure not muted. Okay, great. So thank Thank you, Judy. As she mentioned, Sarah Hartline, and I'm an estate planning attorney with Margolis and Bloom. And one of the things you might be thinking just in terms of how does estate planning connect with downsizing? So one of the things that we tell people whenever they come in to do their plan is that it makes sense to review your estate plan every 5 years or anytime you're going through a major life transition. Downsizing is definitely a major life transition. A lot of things are changing. And so it's definitely the type of event where you want to connect with either your existing estate planning attorney or a new estate planning attorney to get a fresh look at your plan to make sure that it's still, your goals are still the same, that there haven't been any significant changes in assets, for example. And if you don't have any documents in place, if it's one of those things like many people, it sort of has been sort of lingering at the bottom of your to-do list for a while, downsizing is a great time to start the process and to get this done, possibly, hopefully before the move, so that you have one less thing to be thinking about. So the two most important documents that I always tell people are the power of attorney and the healthcare proxy. These are the documents that appoint somebody who, if you're incapacitated, this is somebody who can make decisions for you in terms of your medical decisions, the healthcare proxy, and for the powers of attorney, someone who can access your bank accounts if needed to pay bills, make other necessary financial decisions for you in the event you cannot do so yourself. One thing people don't know is that often financial institutions won't take powers of attorney if they're more than 5 years old. So often people come in and they have a power of attorney from 20 years ago and they think that that's still good. You do usually want to get those updated about every 5 years. And another thing people often don't know is that if you have a spouse who is on an account and it's just in that spouse's individual name, they don't know that as a spouse, you don't have any sort of rights to access that account. So a power of attorney is still needed between spouses for individual accounts. So again, while you're reviewing your plan, things to think about: who are your agents? Are these the right people? Are there changes, updates in address and contact information? These are all good things to think about. So with respect to some other documents that are also equally important, wills, trusts, and life estate deeds. So if you live in the greater Boston area, if you own here, your real estate may be one of your biggest assets. So this is definitely something that when you're downsizing and potentially moving, potentially selling, moving possibly to a smaller place, or moving to a rental or senior living, your will and trust are things that you're going to want to review. You have to think about things like, are you concerned about protecting assets in the event that you do need nursing home care, that you do need to spend down assets for Medicaid coverage? If you're purchasing real estate, how are you going to hold those assets? Are you going to hold them as joint with rights of survivorship? Are you going to consider putting it in a trust or a life estate deed? Also tax planning. For Massachusetts, the estate tax threshold is a lot lower than it is federally. So for some people, estate tax planning might be something that they didn't think about 20 years ago, but now it makes sense to do some of that type of planning. So the important thing here, I think, just to emphasize, is that everyone's situation is different. I often have clients that come in and say, well, my neighbor did a life estate, so that's what I need to do. Or, I have a friend that just moved over real estate into their son's name, and that seems like a great option. But there really are a lot of tax consequences, a lot of consequences in terms of creditor protection, in terms of what happens if one of your children, for example, is divorced, and how is that going to affect your plan. So there's a lot to think about, and it really does make sense to talk with a professional and to review this often. So I also just wanted to touch on estate planning during COVID. Obviously, a lot of people are understandably hesitant to be going into an attorney's office or meeting with an attorney during this time. now is actually, though, a great time to be estate planning because we can do everything virtually right now. We can do the initial meeting virtually, and while the state of emergency is in place, Governor Baker has also passed legislation to allow for virtual signing and notarization. So just, going back to what Carey was talking about at the beginning of the presentation, obviously starting the process earlier is always better. It gives you more options, and it also means that you're not going to be downsizing, selling, moving, and trying to do estate planning at the same time. Often when people are making decisions about putting assets into a trust, for example, it's great to have that plan at the beginning, as opposed to in the midst of things when you have a closing next week. So the only last thing I would just say in terms of peace of mind is that I do see a lot of people that come in, at the beginning of the process, or if I'm meeting with them virtually, and they seem to have, so much weight pushing down on their shoulders in terms of the stress of this and the fact that it's something that they know that they need to do, but not something that's necessarily what they want to be doing. And one of my favorite parts of this job is really when we can sign the documents and they can leave, and they just seem lighter, like this weight has been lifted off of their shoulders. So it's something that certainly makes me feel good. Here's my contact information. I have my email address and my phone number. Like I said, our main office is in Wellesley, but we are doing things virtually, and we do typically do home visits as well, if that's a preference. So I'm going to now turn it over to Bridgette and Soucie, who is going to talk about retirement plans and different types of insurance.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you everyone for being here and listening to us. So my name is Bridgette Soucie. I am an agent with New York Life, and I work typically out of our Waltham office. But right now, because of COVID, it's 100% on Zoom. I do live in Somerville. I have 2 adult children, a daughter who's 25 and a son who's 20. So the topic today is, for our downsizing presentation is update and review. But the real topic is, about you. So everyone has built a financial plan that they believe will help them achieve their financial goals. But changes to your circumstances require, people to reevaluate their plan. Sometimes the circumstances are personal, a different job, family changes, health changes, or a move could impact the plan. And all those times an individual will you normally review your plan and adjust as necessary, as Sarah just mentioned, every 5 years or as changes happen. Other time changes are, more global, like the changing in interest environment, economic recession, stock market volatility, or tax law. So, there's so many things that could affect your plan, and most people will review their plan and adjust as necessary. So this is a time of tremendous change for all of us. COVID-19, coronavirus, it threatens, our health, changes to our social and work habits, for some, their income. For those nearing or in retirement, a drop in market value may cause some to defer retirement date, and others in retirement may have to review their income. So there's one thing we know, and that change is constant. And while most of us have not been through anything close to what we're experiencing right now, you take the pandemic, market volatility, low interest environment, potential recession, New York Life has been through this. So varying points in history has helped their policyholders get through rough times, and right now is no exception. Because we have been through times like this before, we're very saddened by the impact on our policyholders, but we're not surprised. We prepare for times like these so that you are protected. We build and offer products that offer the protection and guarantees that offer you financial peace of mind. I'm an agent, and the company invests in, put a lot of investment in me so that I can help you with those very important personal decisions. just kind of take the stress out of it. And along with stress, we stress test our portfolio to make sure that we can keep our promises even in the most difficult financial market. So let's start with some of the issues that are currently top of mind: interest rate and taxes. So the first area in interest rates, they've been systematically dropping for the past 30 years or so, and recently have stayed at historically low levels. Now, however, they're likely rising. And the other one, taxes, being aware of how taxes can impact your financial picture is critical. So change happens on a regular basis in this area, and over the past 4 years, we've had 12 changes to income brackets and rates. That means about every 4 years or so, we'll see a change. With COVID-19, things to think about. Have you had to deal with any personal exposure to the virus? Has the shutdown impacted major changes? And how much of your income would you like to see be guaranteed? Those are things we talk about when we meet. A pool of safe can be drawn upon, discretionary fund. Life insurance is designed to meet legacy goals, and extended care insurance protects assets in the event of incapacity. Various inconsistent times, and we've maintained the highest rating available from financial agencies. We've maintained our strength for 175 years. So what changes are happening in your world that concern you the most? All the work I do is designed to help you and your family maintain your standard regardless of what happens, as long as you live. Again, my name is Bridgette Soucie. Thank you for listening. And agent with New York Life. And I specialize in life insurance, health insurance for small businesses, long-term care, and annuities. And I'm going to pass over to Kathy right now.
Thank you, Bridgette. That you gave us lots to think about, as did all of your colleagues. Carey Gatto is about to take over and field your questions, but I'm going to bookend her on either side and say, just before she starts, while you think about what your questions might be, that we are very fortunate today and that we are recording this session both for Living Well Network members to see in the future and also for broadcast on Cambridge Community Television. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Carey and talk to you again at the end.
Sorry, I said unmute myself. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, so at this time, we are ready to take your questions. If you would like to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you prefer. It's a great time to put any concerns or questions you have out there to the group. We're all here. And of course, as we mentioned individually as well, we all do free consultations. So you can also feel free to reach out and schedule that with us for more specific questions as well. Figuring out what to ask.
Sarah, can you talk to us just very briefly about the generation skipping trust and what those are for people who have grandchildren?
Sure. So, so I can sort of broadly, there's a lot of different types of trusts that that parents will set up for their children or their grandchildren with a few different goals in mind. And one of those common types of trusts is what's called a generation skipping trust, which is that they will leave property into a trust for a child, which the child can use and benefit from during their life. But then upon the child's passing, it will then pass to the grandchildren. And if it's structured properly, the benefit of doing one of the large benefits of doing this for tax purposes is that it will be taxed as part of your estate, but then it won't be taxed again as part of the child's estate. So when it passes from child to grandchild, there's not an additional estate tax. So that's why it's referenced as a generation skipping trust. But I think some of the other benefits that, at least for my clients, are that they might be concerned, for example, if they're leaving assets for child, and then that child goes through a divorce, that those assets will be subject to divorce and might go to the divorcing spouse, or if the child's subject to a creditor action, for example, that might draw down the assets. So one of the other advantages of doing these types of generation skipping trusts is that you can structure them to provide a little protection to the assets so that you can ensure that the grandchildren can also benefit from the funds.
I actually have a question for Sarah Hartline also. I wondered if you could explain what the difference is between a life estate deed and a trust.
Sure. So life estate deed and doing what's called an irrevocable Medicaid planning trust and doing a life estate deed are two very common techniques that people do in terms of protecting their primary residence from a potential Medicaid lien down the line. So the difference is with the life estate deed, you would transfer what's called the remainder interest to your children, as an example, which is the bulk of the interest or ownership in the property, but then you only retain what's called a life estate interest. So you still have the rights to live there. You're still responsible for expenses. The children can't kick you out of the property. They can't sell without your without your consent. So it's a way of holding on to a little bit of rights, the minimal amount of rights needed to have those things, but transferring over a bulk of the ownership rights into the children's name. And the I guess, one of the reasons that people do that as opposed to just transferring property outright to the child without retaining the life estate interest is because first they want to retain those rights. And then also for tax planning purposes, the life estate deed would allow for the children to get what's called the step up in basis upon sale. So that's why life estate deeds are a common technique in terms of mass health planning, because after 5 years, if the person is to need to do a spend down for Medicaid planning, 5 years being the look back period, the majority ownership in the property is protected, and upon the person's passing, the life estate owner, the property is owned entirely by the child. There's no probate and there's no estate recovery against that asset. Doing an irrevocable trust, it's similar in that you have similar goals. Your children are going to be typically the trustees of the trust. You're transferring the property over to the trust into the children's control, and usually retaining, a few rights just so that the children can't, for example, force you out of the property or, sell without you knowing. So you retain some rights, and enough rights for tax purposes to again get that step up upon sale. But I would say the biggest difference between the trust and the life estate is that the trust provides some additional protections in terms of the children's ownership. So with the life estate deed, I was just talking about some of those, concerns that parents might have about what if my child goes through a divorce or if there's a creditor action. Well, those can be very real concerns if you're doing a life estate deed. So you transfer your property over to your child, retaining a life estate interest, and then that child goes through a divorce, that they have an ownership right that's now potentially going to be subject to that divorce. The advantage of doing the trust is that the trust can provide some more protections. And sorry, that was actually me trying to be very concise because there's so much on this topic. So that's like a very, very short summary, but it's I think going back to the point that I made earlier, it really just is about, your situation, your family dynamic, the tax purposes, what the property was bought at, what you're selling it at, and sort of you would go through those things with an attorney to determine which of those might be the best option for you.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we have a question in the chat. I'll just read it. My 90-year-old mother is fiercely independent and gets insulted at the thought that she might need help with anything in the future. She's starting to have some cognitive decline, and I'm worried that she's limiting her options by not being proactive. Do you have any advice for people who don't think they need help? This might be a question for Wendy.
Yeah, let me take that. So I see this all the time. I do. I work with, this is a very typical situation. So, and it's hard. And so I think my first recommendation is for you as the adult child or someone who cares much about this person is to do the research and find some different options. And then present a couple of different options to her. So if you work with a professional, it could be me, it could be a geriatric care manager, it could be someone who focuses on dementia. I work with a lot of folks around dementia. I think if you understand the different options, you can lay those out, and then also whoever you're working with can help you paint a picture to her that might make sense. But the trick is, again, like we keep talking about, is planning ahead. There's a couple of different tactics I would take depending on how far along the dementia is. If it's very early in the process, it makes sense to have her play a much bigger role in the change. If the dementia is progressed, I would take a very different tack, and I work with people more in this situation where you don't get 100% of their buy-in on a move, but if you believe it's safer and you're working with professionals, there are some tricks on how to get that transition done and still get her buy-in. It's very hard, and it's very sad, and it's such a sad disease, especially once it's further progressed. I'm happy to talk with you offline about it and brainstorm. Even to Sarah's point, every situation is different, and you really have to just sit down with people who understand a lot of different options and a lot about how the disease progresses and what tactics really are useful in working with them. It's not even all intuitive on what works and what's not, and so I encourage you to work with people who really understand dementia. Again, I'm happy to talk offline with you and brainstorm. It's tough.
Thank you, Wendy. These are great questions. And I think it just illustrates how important it is to have a good team, people who do this day in and day out, to lean into. So appreciate that. And again, these are things that all of us have to deal with at some time or another in our life, whether it's family members or ourselves. So don't hesitate to reach out or give our information to someone who might need it.
Hi, can I ask a question? This is, I think, mainly for Sarah. What sorts of documentation would one need to gather beforehand before they began the task of meeting with an attorney regarding estate planning? And how do you charge for the service? Is there a set fee or a fee depending upon the size of the estate, or?
Sure. So, one of the first things, so I'm always happy to sort of talk with somebody on the phone just to get a better sense of what they need and what they're looking for and how we can help. But our initial process is that we have a questionnaire that we send out. And the questionnaire would, have questions about your family and your assets. And then it has on that questionnaire, some suggestions in terms of if you have copies of these documents or things to, sort of bring. But I always, I would say, probably at least 25% of the time, the person, the initial meeting, they don't have anything, they haven't had a chance to fill out the questionnaire and they don't have any other documents, which is totally understandable. A lot of the times we just, have a lot going on and that's our job is to kind of, is to move you through it. And so we can just have, a lot of the times I just end up talking to the person, asking them the questions and filling out the questionnaire myself, to sort of help them, move forward and figure out, okay, well, we really do need this document. So this is something that you do need, or maybe you don't need this. So I think it depends a little bit, in terms of if you are, a very organized person and have all this stuff and want to come with the binder, you can certainly do it that way. Or if you want to just come and start talking and just say, look, I know this needs to be done. What can I do to move forward? We try to do most of our estate planning on a flat fee basis. So instead of doing it hourly, we do the initial consultations. As I had mentioned, we do them via Zoom, and we aren't charging a consultation fee for the virtual consultations. But at the end of that consultation, we would say, look, this is, what we think that you need, maybe it's a new will and a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. Maybe you're considering doing a trust. This would be the different costs for the different options. And then you would, at that point, have the ability to think about it or let us know that you'd want to do A or B or C. And that's how we would go forward. So I think that it's not based in terms of like a percentage of, or based on assets, but it is, someone who has more assets might be doing more complicated planning in terms of maybe they do want to do a generation skipping trust, they want to do estate tax planning. So there's more things that might need to be done or more things that they're considering.
Thank you.
And Sarah, can I say one thing, Marion? I'm actually doing this weekend with my family. We're doing a trust and estate planning. And we were given that option to, here's a list. If you can gather all of these, will make things much easier. So my last 2 weeks have been uploading, 3 years of tax returns, the will, the annuities, everything that they have, all the property in several countries actually. And I'm actually flying to Florida to sit with my parents, and we're gonna do it by Zoom. So they make it's super easy. And she's like, how much time do you think you would need to upload the documents? I looked at it and I was like, maybe 2 weeks. And it's painless. It was easy. It sounds like a lot, but with enough time. And I volunteered to do it for my parents, and I have access to all that stuff. So I literally used an app to take a picture of it, upload it to an encrypted site, and that's it. The lawyer has everything that they'll need to start the planning. So it's not that bad.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Carey, you want to wrap and then send it to me?
Yeah, thank you for your questions. That was great, and thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time. So I'll send it back to you, Kathy.
Well, I want to thank all of you. That was great for me to listen to. It's a lot of food for thought and a lot of good ideas. I would like to welcome all of our participants to use the chat right now to type in 2 things. One thing you learned that you think would be useful, and one thing that you'd like to know more about. And then I'm going to do the terrible thing of talking while I ask you to do that. So find the chat, find the thing that says chat at the bottom of your screen, click on that, and you can type in one thing you learned and one thing that you would like to know more about. This is the first of our series on future planning. In the fall, we're going to have Sarah Hartline back with some other attorneys to talk about elder law and what you might want to know and learn about that a bit more. we're planning a workshop on housing options, which the Living Well Network has done in the past, but we'll revisit that again. And also in our future planning series, we're going to have a workshop on 5 wishes, which is a framework for discussion to help you talk with your family or those who you care about and who care about you about your care and comfort in the future. We have been pivoting lots of our programs online. I know that Judy talked about meditation, which continues as an online practice, and I would like to invite anyone who's not already familiar with the Living Well Network to visit our website at www.agassiz.org and learn more about the programs that we offer now that life has gone virtual. So please, I'm going to thank you all once again. I really appreciate the time that everyone has given us this morning, and I hope that this will be enjoyable also for our viewers at Cambridge Community Television. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you.